All right. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
So welcome. Welcome. So we're so fortunate to have you all with us tonight. And on a brief note, I'd like to just bring up some housekeeping. Please make sure that you silence any electronic devices that you might have, your phone or anything else that you might have that you have in your possession. And take a moment to look around and note where the exits are. So we have one over here to your right, and then we have two in the back, one on the right and one on the left. And the restrooms are in the back as well, over in...
This way, Chuck. Down the hallway.
That's right, down the hallway to your left. So behind you, there's a restroom there. And also, we're going to be hearing some really powerful, impactful stories. We've all experienced life. And so if anybody's feeling overwhelmed at any point, and you'd like to speak to somebody, or you feel you need someone just to sit with you in a moment, we have Amanda Boris Allen with us tonight. She is a counselor from NAMI, and so she would be happy to sit with you and connect with you if you needed some support. Also, each person who has organized this event has also has gone through some post-traumatic stress of some sort, or trauma, or some experience that has brought them to really feel that this type of event is so helpful. And in that, relying on other individuals for strength and, just connecting with others and being vulnerable has really provided so much strength and perseverance to each and everybody that has organized this event. And also the panelists who are here tonight, releasing themselves from holding a story that has really changed their life and changed their story and brought purpose to their life in some way. So I really commend them for being here and being so vulnerable and sharing with all of us. And I also want to recognize that I see some familiar faces, and we often have panelists from previous years who come to experience and listen and really value new stories from other people. So if anybody is a panelist from previous years, you can raise your hand or stand. I'm going to raise my hand because I have spoken. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. So we do have a change in our schedule, so you will notice that it might not be just as on the program, but I promise you it'll be just as enjoyable. I just want to introduce Maddie Munn. She is going to be leading our grounding exercise. So why don't you come on up?
Hello everyone, my name is Maddie Munn, some unfamiliar faces, so thank you all for coming out to this very special event tonight. I will be leading you in your grounding exercise to set the mood for this evening. So if everyone wants to go ahead and just close your eyes, begin by taking a deep inhale through the nose and exhaling everything out. Again, deep cleansing inhale through the nose, feeling that chest expand, and exhaling everything out. Taking a moment to be still, to be silent with your thoughts. asking yourself what emotions might be coming up for you this evening. Not judging those emotions, just observing them, honoring them. Tonight is all about healing, so taking a moment to think about a time that you experienced challenge or trauma and the healing you experienced after, the people that showed up for you. And lastly, taking a moment to think about how you can show up for those in your life, those that you know are hurting, those that you might not recognize are hurting. How can you show up and be a good person to everyone in your life? All right, you can open your eyes. Let's listen to some stories. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. I have the honor of speaking about the Be the One Scholarship. Many of you who have been here before know that since 2019, we have offered high school seniors an opportunity to write an essay, do a video, some way of showing how they promote mental wellness and maybe how they may have been experiencing mental illness in a family member, in themselves, in a co-student. It was created to reach out to people that are up and coming and help us erase the stigma. Going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or seeking mental health assistance as simple as going to a cardiologist or an endocrinologist or anything like that. And these kids come out with these amazing essays. They've done a wonderful job. I'd like to introduce our first recipient, Chloe. Chloe, you want to come right up?
Suicide is a well-known issue across the United States and has significantly impacted teens, myself being one of them. Throughout my middle school years, I thought getting older and becoming a high schooler would be the most fun and exciting times of my life. However, as soon as high school actually rolled around, I soon realized that not everything and not everyone was how I imagined, and it was nowhere near the fairy tale I had assumed it was. My freshman and sophomore years of high school were the absolute worst times of my life. I had several life-changing events take place during these years which affected me emotionally, mentally, academically, and physically. I came to a point where I legitimately thought I could not go any further with my life. I felt as I served no purpose to my friends, family, and school community. I always felt like I was just a body with a bunch of people around me. My breaking point occurred in June of 2022. Between peers, relationships, and the administration at the school I transferred to, I didn't feel like there was a reason for me to keep going. Everyone around me was constantly negative, two-faced, and bullies. During this rough patch for me, I went to the children's psych unit at CPPH for a week and a half. Once I got there, I realized that I am not the only one struggling, that there are people who can truly help you make you feel like yourself again. I faced several life lessons at a young age which were hard to handle then, although the things that hurt me the most are the reasons that I am as strong as I am today. I know I wasn't the only student struggling with these issues locally. Most tend to just stay quiet when going through a difficult time rather than talk to someone. If education systems prioritize students' mental health, then students would feel better about talking about their feelings. Oftentimes students are just told it'll be okay and you'll get through it, but is that seriously all the support we have as students to get us through tough times? Schools should implement things like areas for students to take a break when feeling overwhelmed, or have extra days added to the school year so that students can take a mental health day when needed. Education systems would see a crucial change in mental health in students if they felt as if they had the support they needed. For me, it wasn't until my junior year of high school that I finally felt my spark come back. I started attending CV Tech, and my teachers and peers there are truly genuine and kind. I learned that people do love me and I do serve purpose to this world. My teacher, Miss Maya, has made a significant impact on my life throughout the past 2 years. She never doubted me, not once, and she always believed in me and was always there for me on my worst days. She knew I could be the one to make a difference in others' lives for the better. I went to a Skills USA competition with her and other classmates of mine, and I won second place at states, and I was asked to compete in the national competition in Atlanta, Georgia. I was so thrilled, but yet so full of fear. I thought to myself, how could someone like me do that? In my head, I took myself back to when I was struggling very badly, and I just smiled. I've come so far mentally in the past 2 years that I can't thank the people in my life enough for always believing in me and supporting me through difficult situations. All the negativity and depression I faced through high school will lead me to be successful in my future.
Absolutely, it will. Absolutely. $500 scholarship for being brave and sharing your story, because your story is going to help a lot of others. So thank you so much. Our second recipient, as many of you may remember being in high school and having your wisdom teeth extracted. She's unable to attend. I wanted to recognize Madison Marisco. I was going to read her story, but I don't want to not do it justice. What I can tell you about it is she's a poet, and her imagery and her story was incredible. But I will, when I pass out the recording to this, I will have, with her permission, I will share it with everyone. Amanda, how many do we have? 20? I think 20 applications. I'm on some tough committees. It's one of the really tough ones to decide who would receive the scholarship. So Madison Marisco from Saranac is one, and Amanda Allen is here from NAMI to tell you about our special recipient. We give 2 Be the One scholarships, and we have a Resiliency Award this year, the 2005 Resiliency Award. So without further ado, Amanda Bulwer-Allen.
Resiliency is not the absence of pain, but the strength to face it, the courage to voice it, and the wisdom to transform it into something extraordinary. In just 18 years, Cannon Kriplin has walked a path filled with challenges most of us can hardly imagine, enduring domestic violence, separation from biological parents, parental incarceration, being raised by struggling relatives, reuniting with parents, and navigating the heavy weight of unrealistic expectations. Yet, as he has shown us that true transformation, like a caterpillar evolving into a butterfly despite its surroundings, is not only possible, but profoundly inspiring. This evening, we are honored to present Cannon Kriplin with the 2025 Be the One Resiliency Scholarship. By bravely sharing his truth, Cannon has not only lightened his own burdens, but gifted us all with one reminder. Shame doesn't define us. Our stories hold the power to heal, connect, and ignite hope in others. Cannon?
Flowers to some people. We have some flowers for you, Chloe. But we figured you, as you're going into forestry at Paul Smith's, we thought you would appreciate this even more. So congratulations, and thank you for sharing your story. Okay, so Sally Heisenheimer is coming with Michelle Armani Munn. We'll just check our mics. Good.
Think so. Is this good? Yeah? Okay.
No, okay, a little
No.
louder.
Okay. This is,
Oh.
They were right, yeah. Okay.
So my name's Sally Meisenheimer, and I've been a part of the Evening of Healing since it began. And it all began for me with a glass of wine at Iris's that I didn't know I'd be asked of a task, and Dina asked me if I would MC the first Evening of Healing, and it was a wild ride, and we had many people, and we made it happen, and we've learned so much since then and have heard so many amazing stories. So I want to introduce Michelle. Michelle and I have been friends, we think, for about 17 years. We're not really sure, but we started with a creative project at work and kind of took it away from that and acted like a couple of little girls and did a lot of really fun things together. We became life coaches, we write an advice column together, and I think what has been most meaningful is that we really share the truth of our lives with no judgment, a lot of laughter, and a lot of crying as well. So I want to start my introduction or end my introduction by saying that when we were in the early stages of our friendship, Michelle and I had been doing something in the community together, and we went out for dinner to the Pepper, and we were having a drink and just talking, and she said, I just have to tell you something before you really say you're going to be my friend. And I thought, okay, I am already your friend. I don't think you're going to tell me anything real scary. But what she said was that this is really dark and it might change your mind. And it didn't change my mind. It made me love her even more. And so she's going to be sharing this story with you tonight that she shared with me 17 years ago and has just started talking about it in the last year. So what you learn tonight will make you love her even more. So Michelle is a teacher, and most recently, in the last 5 years, I guess I would say, she has been the creator of a really cool program that educates and trains youth for much better things in their life. And it's called Ready for Real. If you don't know about it, find out about it. It's amazing and it's life-changing. And so I'll let my beautiful and brave friend get started.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Sally, and it is great to see all of you here tonight. And thinking about why we do this. Why do we come together in this sacred space to tell our stories, bare our souls? And it's because healing is a powerful journey. And by sharing our stories, I do believe we heal. And I'm going to share something. She doesn't know I'm going to share this yet, but my niece Sarah is in the audience tonight. And Sarah started an organization called Healing Grace after the death of her daughter Grace in infancy. And I was very moved by the name. It isn't remembering grace. It isn't saving grace, but it's healing grace, because that is such a process of love and transformation, of taking that loss and turning it into something that enhances our life force. So I think that's why we come here tonight, right? To on the hearth and this space, this altar, and share our stories and heal and love one another. So thank you for being part of my story tonight. And I think one of my heroes, besides Sarah and my friends and family, is behind me. This is Martha Graham. Martha Graham was my hero before I even knew I needed one. You know, if anybody has a hero like that. But as a young girl, I danced. I remember one of my earliest memories was when I was 4. And I went to my cousin Patty's dance recital. My parents were sitting next to me, and I think that's when I became a little bit bossy. And I remember being on the edge of my seat and saying, that's what I'm doing. Like, I knew in that instant, like, that was such a powerful art form for me. I think Patty was actually dressed as a tomato, I'm not even kidding, but it was sparkly and she was on the stage and it just was profoundly important to me. And I think that grounded me in my life, that sense of discipline. But Martha Graham was a choreographer who didn't create pretty dances. And the name of this piece is Letter to the World, Kick. And she created this piece as an homage to Emily Dickinson. And in my story, this is the story of my life, learning about my mother and my mother's suicide, this image consistently came back to me, like, this has to be a letter to the world. And I love the part of kick, because even when I didn't feel strong, I knew I had to kick. So this is Martha Graham. Sure. So part of our preparation is, and I think part of our healing is about hope. My family has heard me say this before. Hope is the worst drug there is. Because hope without action, without our kicking, leaves us there. It leaves us stuck. We hope something will be better. We hope something will happen. But after really digging into this piece, and the poem that I'd like to share with you tonight is actually that, Hope is the Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickinson. Hope is this thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the word and never stops at all. My first grade class would be a little ashamed of me. We always memorize poems and I don't have it in my head tonight. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chilliest land and on the strongest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. So I think, again, looking at what hope can do for us when it motivates us to take action, to speak, to heal, to move, I think it can be a powerful tool. And I think that's what we're here to share tonight, to share our stories about healing and about kicking back when necessary.
So, Michelle, can you bring us back to Tully, New York, in the Syracuse area, and give us a little glimpse of your childhood?
Well, you knew what I was doing at 4. But I did grow up in Syracuse. And if I get really comfortable tonight, you'll hear that central New York in my voice. But I had a very average life. I grew up with a brother, my parents. We did the things that people do. I had a very large extended Italian family, so there was also always lots of food and gathering together. And I did the things that you do. I rode a bike, I danced, I celebrated birthdays and holidays. I tried really hard in school, although I often did my homework on the bus in high school because I was busy at dance practice the night before. But I felt loved. But I always knew there was something a little bit off, maybe. A little undercurrent, what I call an undercurrent of somethingness. I couldn't name it, but I knew something was not exactly the way I thought it should be. But I had a very, I say this now, average upbringing. There were some challenges later. But yeah, I felt loved, I felt embraced, and I think as my story unfolds tonight, that's a very powerful part of the story as well.
So tell us about your mom, what you remember.
What I remember about my mom, and we'll probably circle back to this a little bit. My mom was 52 when she died by suicide. And part of as my story unfolds, I have a mom I knew before she died and a mom I met after she died. And the mom I knew growing up was, oh man, she was something. She was beautiful and artistic and athletic. I remember we were in a public pool at a college, and my mother no rules. Like she wasn't I'm a rule follower. She was not a big rule follower. And she went to the high dive and she jumped, did like this perfect jackknife. I was like, whoa, like from the highest platform. And she just was a person who was beloved by everyone. She was the middle child, 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers, scrappy, beautiful, like just, she was something. And she was always a great comfort to me. And I remember my mom sometimes looking at me like, I don't really get you, but I adore you. Like we were very different in many ways. And when I was younger, I was, as I shared with you, I was a dancer. And I had knee injuries from a very young age, lots of surgeries before I hit college. And I remember my mom taught me this trick of when I would come home from practice, just like in intense pain, she would say, just hold my hand and we're gonna turn this into some light and it's just gonna flow through us. And she would sit by my bed. I mean, she was a mom who made my lunch until I graduated from high school. And she wrote me notes. So she was a mom of the, one for the record books. She was a really good mom. And she was a painter. She and my dad had a painting and wallpapering business. And this was at a time where women didn't do those things, like during the 60s and 70s. So she was really a trailblazer. I didn't, sadly, appreciate that at the time. But now my youngest daughter wants to also become a painter and wallpaper, and I say bravo to you. And my sister, who you'll meet later in the story, does the same work. But yeah, she was a spectacular mom. She did a really good job at being my mom.
So let's fast forward to 1995 and talk a little bit about where you were personally in your life and then what you started hearing or not hearing from your mom.
Yeah, right at this time, today actually is the anniversary, if you will, of my mom's death. So I'm at the midpoint. Again, 30 years with my mom and 30 years without my mom. In 1995, right before her death, she still lived in Syracuse. I was here, and she would come and visit and celebrate birthdays. And yesterday was my son Abe's birthday. And I hadn't heard from her, and I hadn't heard from her. And it started to be very unusual, very out of character. Near the end of her life, she did share with me, it was called manic depression at the time. She had been diagnosed with that illness. But again, in her spirit, read the books and did the work to try and heal. And she shared that with me. But right before my son's birthday, I wasn't hearing from her. So I called my dad, and they had separated at that point, but were friendly. He hadn't heard from her. Her friends hadn't heard from her. So I found out on Good Friday, at this point we had called the police, and we found out that my mother's body had been found in the woods near where she was living, near her home. So that was a holiday that the themes of Easter, of death and resurrection, were not lost on me. And so that was the year that I learned my mother had died, as we said at the time, committed suicide. I think we've evolved quite a bit from then. We now say died by suicide because, I guess in my mind, committing suicide is a very active choice. We don't say, I'm gonna go get cancer. I'm gonna go break my leg. So I'm thrilled that there is a newfound sense of not blaming, but my mother died. And that's when the story begins.
So there were some secrets, and how you knew your mother turned out to be, of course, that's never forgotten. What a wonderful mother she was and is, but also something happened at the time that you showed up for her funeral, and can you tell us about that secret?
Yes, I can. I was asked the question on Easter by my aunt, Michelle, do you know all of your mother's secrets? It answers itself, right? And I said, not if you're asking me this question. And she said, I can't be the one to tell you. I'm like, seriously? She's your uncle, my mom's youngest brother. So he sat down with me, and I had already sent my mother's obituary to the newspaper, had already started making funeral arrangements. And he said, Michelle, your mom was married before she met your dad. And I said, oh. And I remember we're sitting like this. He was sitting across from me holding my hands. And I said, did she have children? And he said, yes. And then somebody knocked on the door. He answered the door. This man walked in. They embraced. And I'm still in quite a state of shock from her death. And this man walked in, and we were sitting on the couch, and he sat on the end. And George, my Uncle George, starts talking with me again. And I looked over and I said, I'm sorry, I'm Michelle. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. Did you know my mother? And as I looked at him, I said, did you know our mother? And so this was her son, my brother Chris. And what I realized is what began to unfold is that this secret was not a secret to most people. It was a secret to me. It was kept from me. And as family began to gather, throughout that day, I also learned in that moment that my mother also had a daughter, Becky. And one of the first things that I learned about Becky, outside of her very existence, was, Becky, Michelle, we need to tell you, Becky looks an awful lot like your mom. And that was something I heard throughout the day. And as I'm greeting relatives, people I knew who knew me from the moment of my birth, everybody knew Becky and Chris. Everybody knew. So finally that afternoon, Becky came over. I was off around the corner in the kitchen, and relatives were greeting her, and I could hear in their voices the knowing of her. And she came around the kitchen, and I looked at her. I turned around, and for a moment, like this, I don't know if anyone's had this moment like this, but I felt that I was in heaven, that somehow my mother came back to me in that moment. And I walked over to her, and I did this. Like, her hair was exactly like our mother's, like this beautiful golden corn silk, and her cheekbones. And I started to hold her face in my hands, and I met her eyes, and then I held her hands. And this ring that is very unusual was on her hand as well. And I realized she had a relationship with our mother. And it was that moment that, I guess, our love story began. That healing began because she was open to now knowing me in a real way. And so that's when I say the real story began. Knowing my mother, who I learned, gave birth at 18. She graduated in June of 1960, and by November 16th, she had a child the same year. And the world was really a different place then. This beautiful, athletic, artistic woman didn't necessarily have the same opportunities that we would have today. It was a different world. And so she did the needful things. She had a child, she got married, she had another child 2 years later, and at some point, and this is the untold part of our story, I don't know why. I don't know why she left them. I don't know how she lived with the weight of leaving them. But that's what healing is, right? Taking her story and trying to, in my life, do that work. Chloe, you were so brave to come up here first. And you said the people who you find who love you. And hopefully I am that teacher for some person. Kind of like living my mom's story, right? And I have young girls who are pregnant, and one of them said to me, she goes, Ms. Hermione, why do you help me so much? And I said, well, I've not always had the easiest life. She goes, really? And I said, there have been some hard things. I said, by the time I was married, my dad was in prison, I had lost my mother, I found out my entire life was a lie, but it's what we do, we help each other, and we grow.
So Michelle, I know that you've used this to make a difference in the world. And can you talk a little bit about when you decided to share this with everyone in our community and kind of how that unfolded?
Yeah, as I shared earlier, my mother was a beautiful artist, and when I saw that this community was creating a mural of You Matter, and I was turning 60, I wasn't exactly jazzed about turning 60. My 40s were good. 50s were a little rough, but I thought I'm embracing 60. So how do I have it, how do I kick off my 60th decade? And I saw this and I thought, I need nothing. And I thought, what better way? There was some fundraising happening for the mural. So I contacted Sally and Dana and Dina. I think Dina was my first call, and I said, what do you think about this? Would this be a good idea? And so I had a party, and I asked people to donate money to the mural. And from there, we were very fortunately invited to paint a small piece of that, and just to be able to share that, to drive by that near the church where I was married, where my children were baptized and made their confirmation, and to have that as a testament to her and to everybody else, to know that your life does matter. It might be a moment like Grace's, it might be 52 years like my mom, or Sean's life. Every single life matters. And so I was thrilled to be able to turn 60 in a way. I didn't get an Escalade. I didn't get baptized. At 50, I thought maybe they'd rise to the occasion at 60. It was okay. And I was just amazed to be a part of this community that was interested in hearing my story.
So when the mural was dedicated, the You Matter mural was dedicated, Michelle spoke about her mom that day and blew everyone away. I think lastly, Michelle, how do you use your life experience to impact the students that you work with?
I think one of the most powerful lessons I learned immediately when I looked into my brother's eyes was maybe radical forgiveness. It didn't feel radical at the time, and I can't explain why so many people kept a secret that could have been told. But I think, and I have this near the door when we walk outside every day, everybody has a story. Be kind. And I hope that my students, I treat them with respect and compassion, and Ready for Real, I guess, is the land of the eternal second chance. You can make any number of mistakes, and we will take you under our collective wing, talk about what happened, and try again. Because nobody should feel the way Chloe feels, or my mom, or anybody. And we have to tap into that and say that you can build a life. This moment of darkness, and I had many of them. I had deep sadness that almost broke me as an adult. And so I think working with students to be able to be honest and truthful about your stories is one of the most powerful lessons that we can share. Because there is stigma, there is shame, there is, I need to be strong for you. But in that vulnerability, I guess we have strength. So sharing what is relevant to them what I think can help heal them. And I think that's what I try to do.
So C.S. Lewis said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. And I think you all have heard what an ending this is. You matter. Thank you so much.
Such a good friend. Love you.
Michelle, that was amazing. I could listen to you just go on for longer, but 20 minutes goes fast, everybody. Rachel Premore is with us tonight. It's an honor for me to introduce Rachel. She is a dance student of Heather Van Arsdale at Center Stage Plattsburgh, and you're in your 7th and final dance competition series. And as a former panelist of Evening of Healing, my fabulous friend Betsy saw that you had performed this as part of Center Stage at the Mall, and she was moved by your performance, and she connected us to each other. So you're going to do a interpretive and lyrical dance, and you're going to figure out where you want to be. All right, Jay, you got her music? Thank you.
I think I understood it was getting bad again when I started to do everything sitting down. And I think I understood it was getting bad again when a smile became more difficult to produce than a frown, when the room didn't light up whenever I was around, and when the tears came silently, not creating any sound. And I think I knew it was getting bad again when my own internal clock stopped ticking, when the itching for joy became my new favorite pastime, when a laugh with my friends cost much more than a dime. It was more like an act that I put on, with a grinning mouth that isn't even mine. And I think I knew things were getting bad again when my bed went from being a resting place to being a tomb, when I couldn't look any of my friends in the face, and when I started to assume that I wasn't wanted or needed, when my head felt haunted and I pleaded. And I think I knew it was getting bad again when my pen felt too heavy to pick up and write, when the same damn haunted dreams played in my head throughout the entire night. So I rip out my hair in hopes that I'll be able to see clearly, in hopes that those I love dearly will notice. Do the empty patches on my head express it to you? Or should I keep silent and internalize what I'm going through? Or should I continue to release my empty screams into nothingness with tears flooding down my face? Tell me, if I'm so important to you, then why am I so easily replaced? I think I knew it was getting bad again when the fog came back. The crows flew away and the darkness started to attack. When a simple conversation became exhausting and I avoided all human contact. And when I began to wonder if I'll ever get my permanent smile back.
Workout with the mic here tonight. Rachel, that was incredible. And thank you, Betsy. So, it is my privilege to introduce Ayesha Mosley. Ayesha is the youngest panelist ever for Evening of Healing, and I've been touched by her bravery, clear voice, and her wisdom beyond her 15 years. Ayesha will share for you first from the podium an essay that she's prepared tonight, and then after she will be joined by her mom, Rochelle, and me, and we're going to continue the conversation. And with that, Ayesha, I welcome you.
Everyone is born into different circumstances, some better than others, some worse. When the idea of writing this came up, all I could think about are other kids, still struggling in different situations. Maybe they are self-harming, in foster care, in abusive homes, or maybe contemplating ending their lives. I thought about my feelings and thoughts while navigating my life challenges, and I realized I did not know someone who had gone through similar life events that I could relate to. I had only known people in difficult situations coping through substance use or other unhealthy choices until I was placed into foster care. I had grown up in chaotic households my whole life with an on-again, off-again drug-addicted mother, abusive drug-addicted stepfathers, and a mostly absent alcoholic father. I am one of 6 kids born into this family, 4 of whom lived with our grandmother and another who lives with her biological mom. I was the only child living with my biological mother. I had a 6-month stay with my grandmother when I was in the 1st grade. As a result of me telling my 1st grade teacher I was afraid my stepfather was going to kill my mom. CPS was called. Throughout my mental health journey, I have felt alone, sad, angry, and really any emotion one can feel. Although I needed help throughout my childhood from many mental health professionals, my mental health issues really started to show when many others did. During the lockdown in 2020. During this time, I was in 4th grade and home alone throughout entire days for months. My mental health plummeted. In 5th grade, I was diagnosed with depression and started to self-harm. In 6th grade, I went to the hospital 3 times, resulting in a stay on the mental health unit and respite foster care to give my mom and me a break. The 3rd visit was the result of a serious suicide attempt. Note to self, if ever in the mental health unit, pretend to have a headache to get out of group. The day of my attempt was in June, my 6th grade year when I was 12 years old. The day wasn't a particularly bad day for me. I hung out with my friends at the YMCA, we swam, joked, and had a good time. After spending time with my friends, I walked home and went to my room and was on my phone until it died. I started crying but could not tell you the reason I was sad. To alleviate the sadness, I tried to self-harm and cut myself to feel better. It didn't work. I didn't feel better. I grabbed a chair and a belt from my bathroom. I tied the rope around the back of my door, then dropped once, twice, and I don't remember dropping a 3rd time. The next thing I remember is hearing screaming and falling off my door, hitting my head off the wall. I stood up and started rambling about how sorry I was, how I didn't mean to, how I didn't want my mom to be mad at me. The police came. I told them I was sorry as well, and they brought me downstairs and I sat in the ambulance. My parents, my grandma, and my sister all came to the hospital. When I saw my dad, I was scared he would be angry. He only asked if I was okay, then left the room. My grandmother was crying and it made me angry. Now she seemed to care when she never seemed to care before. My older sister was also present and it was awkward and made me uncomfortable. My mom, she really wasn't present. Her body was there, but no emotions, maybe shock. My biological mother was deteriorating. I stayed at the same foster home for a couple of weeks while my mom was in rehab again. When she got out, I went back with her. We were evicted from our apartment and moved into a hotel. She again relapsed, and I was sent with my respite parents for at least 6 months. Now, this was no longer just respite, but somewhere I would need to be for a while. I became angry and defiant. The more structure and more rules they tried to place, the more angry and defiant I became. There were also rules from DSS. As a child who was used to parenting myself, and sometimes my mother, this was hard. For 6 months, it was very rough between me and my foster parents. I was now in 7th grade. On top of the new structure that I resent, my biological mother would tell me she was getting better. My foster parents would have to tell me the truth. She wasn't. This hurt and made me more angry. Note to self, do not put a sign on your bedroom door for your foster parents that read, "Do not come in, I do not like you." They will respond with annoying notes all over the house that say, "We love you, Aisha." When I finally accepted that my mother wasn't going to get me back, I set my sights on my father to take me in, who, for my whole life, had always had an excuse on why he couldn't do something. He would not do supervised visitation to see me because he didn't like them. He said without stipulations by DSS, he would be in my life. I have seen him twice since there were no demands on him. The last time was in August of 2024. Parental rights were being terminated, and rather than go through the entire court process at 13 years old, I asked my biological mother and biological father to willingly give up their parental rights so I could be adopted. Every time there was a setback, a disappointment, I was angry with my mother or father or my situation. I took it out on the only people that were there for me, my foster parents. I tested how much my foster parents could take from me before giving me away. I expected they would leave me, just like the other people who were supposed to love and care about me, my biological parents. Every time, even when I pushed enough buttons to make my foster parents angry, they would say, "You can be mad at us, hate us even, but we are not going anywhere, and we will see this through no matter how long it takes." Throughout my childhood, my respite, my foster care, and my adoption, it hasn't been easy. It has been hard for me, and at times, hard for my adoptive parents. Through all of this, I want it to be known it was all worth it, all of it. The tears I have shed and the struggles I have faced has led me to unconditional love and support. Not every day is easy, but it is easier to get through the harder ones when you have someone you can trust and is a stable pillar of care. My adoptive parents told me I was not a bad kid. I was a kid in a bad situation. Everyone is born into different circumstances, some better than others, some worse. I hope in sharing some of my story, some may be able to relate and find something that will let them know they are not alone. Everyone has an opportunity to create better circumstances.
You have the wireless mic, right? Okay. Michelle, would you be kind enough to get this other mic? What we're going to do is I have a few questions for both of you. You both will share. Yes. And I'll try not to hurt anybody with this wire. That was incredible. Thank you. Beautifully delivered. So you wrote, Aisha, about your asking your bio parents, asking them willingly to give up their parental rights, which they did at 13. So where does the strength come from that you had to know that?
I'm not sure it really comes from anywhere necessarily. I think I had a lot of time to talk about it with my foster parents and to think about it myself. And it wasn't an easy decision, of course, but I had to think about what was best for me and in the long run, what would still be best for me. So just the strength of kind of thinking about yourself and knowing that what you're doing is right for you.
Pretty incredible at 13 to stand up to your parents that way. So for your now you call Rochelle mom. So for your mom, I know Rochelle because she's got a big job in this community, but we agreed we wouldn't talk about that tonight. She's going to just be a mom, okay? So she writes about these notes that are around the house, and your retaliation to her "I don't like you" note was "I love you," and you like what else did you have to do? Like, what was that part of the relationship like for you then, now, and what support do you provide as Aisha's mom?
So I think some of the struggles with children who've gone through extensive trauma is trying to decide what is trauma and what is a normal teenager. If anyone has raised teenagers here, not easy, not likable all the time, and so pulling that apart and taking Aisha's feelings and thoughts, she's very articulate, as you can see, and making sure that we are providing the space for her to heal. It's in her time frame, and that we are holding her accountable to being a good person, but at the same time giving her grace to feel what she needs to feel and do what she needs to do. So I think that she's a wonderful kid, as you see, and we love her so very much. But just like any other family, we've gone through struggles and times that she didn't like us very much, and we struggled with her, and every now and then, just like a normal mother-daughter, we clash, and that's just two strong women in a house together. So I think we live each day the best we can and figure out our relationship along the way.
So you're right, it was worth it. I thought that was great. The struggles, the tears. You were just a kid in a bad situation. So what worked for you to embrace? I know your foster parents told you that. Was that what worked for you, or how did you really go about believing that, changing your narrative?
When I moved in with them and I was in a different home environment, I did push back in the beginning, but as I continued being there, I did get better, and I did really flourish with them before, when I was kind of not doing well. So getting out of that bad situation that I was in and into a good situation kind of made me realize that everything wasn't my fault, and I wasn't like a terrible kid, and I was a normal teenage kid, and I was put in a bad situation, and getting out of that, I was able to just be a kid and not have to try to be the adult in every situation I was in, and focus on myself and being there for myself. I think that I kind of knew that anyway, but them telling me that really solidified it for me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we need to hear it over and over again. I love your notes. Sometimes people do that in their houses anyway, just because, right? So when we were doing our preparation, one of the things you mentioned, Michelle, was you're very careful about who can spend the night in your house, that you have some conversation around some boundaries around this. So what's this shared approach to decision making, and how did you make it work for you as a family? Can you tell us a little more?
Which part is shared?
Well, I don't know, didn't you discuss, you said you discussed it with Aisha before anybody can come over, you have a conversation, right?
Yeah, so we have to really respect Aisha's boundaries. That's very important to create an atmosphere of safety, and we have to respect when Aisha wants to speak or see her biological parents, and we have to make sure it's safe and they're healthy when she does, but we leave that open to her, kind of like a blended family. And Aisha is very capable of telling us where she's at or how she's feeling, or very open to us pointing out, hey, I don't think you're doing very well, you're spending a lot of time, or you're angry, or you're alone a lot. And she's very open to reflecting on that. I think that we are very careful with, Aisha likes her personal space. So she likes our home to be her sanctuary, right? Your room is your sanctuary. And so she needs that downtime, and she needs to unplug from everyone else and give her time to process and heal. So we always have a conversation about what she needs, when she needs it, and we negotiate in our house and taught. When Aisha first came to us, anything we presented to Aisha ended up in a blow up, right? Everything. And we'd say, hey, you could win some of these if you learned how to advocate for yourself and negotiate. And I think that maybe you might be a diplomat eventually, I'm not sure.
You were taught some life skills there in that moment, but one of the things you shared was you switched schools, and you started someplace new last fall, and you weren't quite sure about telling your story publicly, because now you have this new friend group that doesn't necessarily know Aisha before Beekmantown High School. So tell me about what helped with that transition. Did the community welcome you, and what made you decide to share this so openly tonight? Because we went back and forth on what parts you would share, and then you said, I'd like to tell the whole thing.
So I've been to 3 schools in the area, NCCS for my whole elementary, Plattsburgh from 5th to 7th, and then now Beekmantown. And at Plattsburgh is really when I started to deteriorate from 5th going into 7th. So it was kind of hard to hide, you know, I had scars on my arms, I was out a lot in the hospital, so people knew, but I was also I've never been embarrassed about it. If anybody asked, I would tell them the truth. I never felt ashamed about it. When I moved to Beatmantown, I was very nervous. I think what helped is I did have a sibling who was a senior when I was going into Beatmantown, so that was like, it felt more comfortable for me. But at Beatmantown, because I wasn't there when I was really deep into struggling, not many kids besides my close friends know. So I was kind of worried when I was going to do this, not that a whole bunch of kids would be here, but I was worried about just people kind of finding out and maybe judging me. Not that I'm ashamed about it. I was always just kind of like, I don't want my people who know me to like feel weird about it. But I think it's best to talk about it. I feel like kids' voices aren't heard a lot of the time. I think it's a lot of adults speaking about what they felt during it and what they felt why their kid was struggling or maybe why they were struggling. So I felt seeing and hearing a perspective from a young person who still does have struggles. I still struggle. I'm only 15, so I'm going to have struggles, of course, for a long time. But hearing about it from somebody who has gone through it very young, but can also speak about it and not be embarrassed or ashamed of it, I think is good for everybody, especially, honestly, adults, to hear too the perspective from a kid. I think that is a big part of it.
You've represented a generation very well tonight. Michelle, last question for you. So there's people that they don't know if they would make a good foster parent or respite parent, adoptive parent, or anything. Is there a place they could start? And I know it's a long answer, but how do you get people in the community involved? Because we're always looking for capable, loving families, right?
So I and my husband, when our 4 other children moved out of the house, I always wanted to do foster care because I knew, especially teenagers, people were apprehensive about having teenagers in their house. And I love teenagers, and I love teenagers that are angry and struggling, and I just love them. It's a game for me, right? Bad note, stick positive notes out everywhere. So we just were going to do respite. We had no intention of adoption. We were not looking for adoption. We just wanted to help out, and for a weekend, give a kid a safe place to be, to come down and to have good food and just chill. And that's part of the transition that was difficult, because when she was at our house for respite, everything was about Asia, whatever meals you wanted, no real rules, just go to sleep at a good time, turn off your phone. And then when she came to live with us for the first time for an extended period, rules started to happen for her. So that was difficult, I'm sure. But I think when you just open your heart and you open your home, and each kid, you find something special inside them. And I always say, just try out a kid, right? Just have them in your house, see how they fit, see all the things that make them special. Because if you know their stories, you know just by being there and surviving, and that they're resilient, and they have something in them so special to be there before you and in that circumstance right now. Because I can't imagine being pulled from my family and going into a foster home and how that would feel with strangers, right, telling me what to do. And for me, I love it when they outsmart me. I'm thinking, okay, this is what they did this time. This is what I'm going to do next time. So I just kind of play games with it. She does, and she knows my soft spots too. So just try, and you don't have to commit, and then you end up with a beautiful love story.
Yeah, yours is an amazing story of resilience. I want to make sure we give Aisha the last word. Is there anything else you want to say that you haven't said tonight?
I would say that if you're going to go into foster care, just in not even thinking about adoption, really do, like Rochelle said, really don't forget about the teenagers, because they are scary and we are mean, and and I get that, but there's I have friends who are in foster care, and it's like, they're being overlooked just because, they have stories that might scare people and because they're older. But you know, getting to know a kid, no matter what age, is an amazing experience, and I think anybody should be able to experience that.
I'll try it, kid. All right, thank you both very much.
When you said that you respect, and now it's time to build from the bottom of the pit right to the top. Don't hold back. Packing my bags, giving the academy a rain check. I don't ever want to let you down. I don't ever want to leave this time. 'Cause after the city never sleeps at night. It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just the same as I was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am? After all, the city never sleeps at night. It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit it's just the same as it was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am? It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just the same as I was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am? This road never looked so lonely. This house doesn't burn down slowly to ashes, to ashes. It's time to begin, isn't it? Get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just the same as I was. Now don't you understand that I'm never changing who I am? It's time to begin, isn't it? I get a little bit bigger, but then I'll admit I'm just the same as I was. Now don't you understand? Never changing who I am.
A fun story. You can get your presentation ready, Jackie, if you'd like. Oh, okay. Jay was such a good sport. I always ask the panelists what song they like, and I see if it's in their wheelhouse. And Asia was wonderful. She gave me this list. It was like Santa's list, this long list. So I can tell she's got amazing playlists in her life. And so what I do for the artist is I go on YouTube, get the video, and I send it to the artist, and I say, is this in your wheelhouse? And I made some notes, and which was silly of me. I'm not the musician. Have one in my life, but I'm not the one. And so Jay's like, ooh, I like this one. So you did a wonderful job. That was- I have the ultimate pleasure of introducing our next panelists. I have known Tom Halleck for many, many years. Many of you know him back from the WPTZ days. And that, I believe, is where you met your wife Jackie, isn't it, when you were a marketing executive? So Tom and Jackie worked at WPTZ for years, and Jackie went on to work in the banking industry in marketing and communications. And Tom went from private TV to public TV. And we don't have a more strong and ardent supporter in everything we do than Tom Halleck. You are there for the mural, you're there for Evening of Healing, you're there for every event that we have. You have the Mountain Lake Public Journal that gives us deeper insight in everything. You're there if it's political, if it's something emotional, physical, you're there for us, and I can't thank you enough for all you do for our community. I'm going to let them come up, and they're going to introduce yourselves and tell your story. I know you've read in the program about their son Tristan, where they had 3 wonderful days, and they're going to tell you their story. So without further ado, Tom and Jackie Halleck.
We'll sit. He always defers to me.
That's how you make marriage work.
You're not wrong. So I want to start by saying that Tom and I were very private people prior to Tristan's death. We didn't talk publicly about ourselves, really. I mean, Tom never talks about himself on air. A lot of TV personalities sort of bring their lives onto the air, and Tom never did that. But once Tristan died, what happened to us was an outpouring of people sharing their own stories with us from complete strangers. And I can't tell you what that meant to us during that time. It helped us heal. And so we looked at each other, especially after the Tristan Fund, and we said, we have to be open to sharing our story, especially since we fought such a long battle with infertility. And that's something that women don't talk about. And so we're gonna share our story tonight, and we will tell you that it is hard to hear. We've never told anybody publicly. We're like in a safe space, right, about how we met, right, at work, that's okay. Channel 5 isn't here anymore, it's fine. And so, you know, and so we'll give you we'll flesh out what happened. And I think, you know, I've attended pretty much most evenings of Healing, and I've always sat in the back and thought to myself, well, thank God that's not happened to me, and never thought that I would find myself on stage or facing such horrible grief and tragedy that I would find myself here. And it was because I heard so many stories when I was in my early 30s coming to these things, that I knew we could get through it. And so hopefully our story can help if there's one person out there who has suffered something similar. If our story helps you in some way, then this has been a job well done. So, do you want to tell them how we met?
All right. It may be hard to believe, but being on television, you might think that you meet so many people, and my gosh, the guy never has trouble getting a date. It's not a business that's conducive to dating, all right? You work long hours, you work weekends, you work evenings, you work for many years building up your career, and so that's not great for dating. And so I was a bachelor, well into my 30s and then into my early 40s, when a beautiful young producer came in from graduate school and sat next to me in the desk right next to me. And I was like, wow. But, like a lot of other young producers before her, the boyfriend's photo went right up there at the desk, prominently seen. And it was like, all right, Well, so be it. Until the day when the photo wasn't there anymore and had been put in the drawer. And so, quietly, discreetly, we started going out for drinks after work. We worked late hours. We did the 11 o'clock news, so we would be up until midnight, 12:30, and we would go discreetly to Jay Christopher's before it became Olive Ridley's.
Does anyone remember Jay Christopher's?
And
Yeah, so I should also share, I was a news producer. I was Tom's news producer. I was not his boss. There was nothing bad going on. But we worked one-on-one together for years. And for those of you who don't know what a news producer is, I wrote basically everything you said. So that was really
which I
fun.
would then change, and we'd have arguments about it. But that's a whole other story for a discussion for a different day. But we slowly were discreetly going out for drinks because we would go out before last call and have wine, and we became close. Again, discreetly, nobody knew. Then they started to get an inkling. Then they finally knew when the old anchor man showed up at Chug-a-Mug at Peabody's, and they're like, what's going on here? And so,
To a Channel 5 event.
right,
You didn't just show up there.
right.
Like,
And so we started dating hourly, and we fell in love, and after dating for 6 years, we got married in 2012 and knew immediately that we wanted to start a family. And that's where I'll turn it back to you.
So, yeah, I mean, I was 30. You were a little older than me. There's a little bit of an age gap for those of you who can see. So we knew we immediately needed to start a family, and so we just did what everybody does. We started trying, and I was being a good girl. I was going to the gynecologist every year, and I was like, hey, I want to start a family. It hasn't happened yet. She's like, you're healthy, you're good, come and see me in a year. And so every year we did that. I did this. I went every year. When I turned 35, I looked at my gynecologist and I said, I haven't been pregnant yet. And it's been 5 years of trying. Something's not right. And she goes, okay, let's start doing some tests. And so I started down a road of increasingly more aggressive testing, surgeries to try to figure out what was wrong. And then for any of those of you who are familiar with fertility treatments, I started taking medication. I did more exploratory surgeries. I started doing very aggressive fertility treatments known as IUIs. And that eventually led to me being sent to a clinic in Albany to try IVFs and some additional treatments and IUIs. All the while, I was continuing my full-time job, continuing to live my life. But it was a really difficult time. For 5 years I did this. And I don't even want to think about the hormones I put into my body. I started gaining weight. That was really awesome that I haven't been able to take off, because as women know in their 40s, it's like really hard to do that. And so we tried and nothing happened. And finally, when I was 39, I was diagnosed with extremely bad endometriosis, which is very silent. And that was really what was causing the infertility. I turned 40. We decided to give it one more try to do IVF, and we got one embryo, which is not a lot, but we had one, and the embryo continued to grow, which was good. So we had it scheduled. I just turned 40, and we were going to go down to this clinic in Albany and transfer this embryo. It was an early morning procedure, and we were almost to the key exit when I saw my phone ring, and it was the doctor's name. Now, the clinic is usually who calls you, it's not usually the doctor. And I picked up the phone, and he said to me that unfortunately over the night, my embryo had died, it had stopped growing, and there was no reason to come down to Albany because there was nothing to transfer. So Tom and I got off at the key exit, turned around and came back up the Northway, in silence, basically, and we knew that it was over for us. That it was just, we were not going to have a child. And then went on a quick trip to Florida, tried to reset. We were trying to figure out what we wanted to do, but unfortunately, we had to put, as life has it, put his mom into assisted living. So we were going through that process and then into nursing care.
And that was early summer of 22?
22.
And So I came home from a long day of work, and we had a dinner scheduled with neighbors, and it was like, oh, could this day get any worse? And I walked in the kitchen, and you met me in the kitchen with...
I had gotten pregnant on my own after 10 years of trying. 5 years on our own, 5 years with fertility treatments and IVF.
Best news I had ever heard in my life. And it was just incredible. We were worried though, because of everything Jackie had been through. So we went through the most extensive testing possible to make sure everything was okay. We got assurances that we had a healthy baby boy, and we were in heaven. At 13 weeks, we started sharing the news with our family and our friends, and we were on cloud 9. And then came 20 weeks.
So we had done extensive genetic testing because I was 40 at this time, and just because of my history of infertility. We had probably 5 ultrasounds by the time we went to our 20-week ultrasound. And so we went to our 20-week ultrasound, and we were just so excited because that's when you get little pictures of your baby. And I was like, that's going on my wall at work. And it started out like a normal ultrasound appointment until the phone started ringing. And I should mention I had had blood work done a few days prior to this. And the ultrasound technician ignored it and kept doing it. Phone rang again, also ignored that again. And then she got yanked out of the room saying that she had an emergency. And so Tom and I were there for like 10 minutes by ourselves when all of a sudden the most senior, and I knew all the stenographers like by first name at this point because I had gone for so many ultrasounds over 5 years of trying to get pregnant, came in very serious and started giving me an ultrasound. And then the doctor came in and basically told us that that there was something wrong with our baby's spine and that we would not be having the baby at CBPH. And do you want to take it from there?
The next few days were pure hell, traveling to Burlington, finding out from a team of surgeons and doctors, pediatricians, a pediatrician cardiologist, that not only did our son have spina bifida, but he had an extreme heart condition and other deformities that he would be deadly. He would not live more than a few days if he survived birth at all. And so our world came crashing down around us within those 5 days that if we could carry him to term and get to meet him, we would be lucky. But even when he was born, he would not survive for more than a few days.
So we had gone from the lowest of lows, finding out that our fertility journey was over, to getting pregnant on our own, to having 20 weeks of like we did everything right, including extensive genetic testing. And I can't tell you what that is like, going through those highs and those lows. I mean, the 20 weeks that we knew we were pregnant before we got the diagnosis were probably the happiest times in our lives. And we've often talked about how the day we found out his diagnosis was the worst day of our lives.
Absolutely.
Because in that moment, everything came crashing down. And so the immediate question was, do we want to terminate this pregnancy? And there was not even a hesitation that we were not going to do that we were going to meet our son. And so I had tried for 10 years to get here, and we were going to meet him, and what did we need to do to make that happen? And the wonderful thing about UVM is that they had just started in its infancy, pun, a pediatric palliative care unit. And they walked us through the process of all the things that we would have to consider. And they basically just greased the skids for us to make sure that no matter what happened, our wishes would be met. The doctors were all on the same page, the nurses were all on the same page, and they really made it so whatever the outcome was, we would be able to spend as much quality time with our son. But we made the decision that we weren't going to put him through any invasive treatments, so he would never be poked or prodded, because it would not meaningfully extend his life. He was his condition was fatal. So what all these things pointed to was a form of what's called trisomy. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with trisomy, and this was something that we had tested for, trisomy 21, for example, is Down syndrome. Tristan had what's called trisomy 13, which basically is an extra chromosome on the 13th chromosome, right? And it just, his condition would be just unsurvivable. So, you know, we just had to figure out what we were going to do. And I literally was planning his funeral and figuring out where we were going to bury him at the same time as I was planning to give birth to him. It was absolutely gut-wrenching to go through that. So the other thing is they made the decision that they were going to induce me at 36 weeks because that would give us the greatest chance for his survival. So on February 8th, we went into UVM.
Yep. You had 24 hours of pure hell of pregnancy.
Yes, I did.
Then they gave you shots of Pitocin. And
A lot of it. And the little guy decided he was ready to come, and he came quickly. Of course, Murphy's Law, he came during shift change. And so we had teams of doctors who were in the room going through and briefing each other. Meanwhile, little Tristan came out. And so there was no doctor to catch him. So he literally, luckily Jackie was on a delivery table, he literally hit his little head coming out because they didn't expect him. They're like, the head doctor went, oh, we have a baby. And sure enough, so they caught him and they gave him to Jack. And here was this little guy, and the cries instantly told us that he was alive. And he had this fiery red hair. We don't know where that came from. That was one of those where, wait a minute, red hair. And then we realized, okay, I had red hair as a child. And so, okay, we answered that mystery. We were on cloud nine. He was alive, and he was crying, and we had him for 3 days. The palliative care team, again, put us in a special suite so we could bring the grandparents, the godparents, and for the next 3 days, we gave him nothing but absolute love. As Jackie explained, we knew that he only had 3 days. There was no sense sending him to the NICU, no sense hooking him up to wires and tubes to prolong his life. He had such a short life that we were going to simply experience him and love him, and that's what we did. We held him, you held him. We were up for 24 straight hours and singing him songs, reading him books, and giving him nothing but absolute love, so that that's all that he would know for the few days that he was on this earth with us, that he wouldn't have to be prodded or poked or have tubes in him or go through any pain. We had already been told that there was no chance of any type of a transplant or any surgery. We had already gone through all of that. There was just no option. So the only option was to an outpouring of love for him, which we did. We read books. We couldn't read some of the books that you would think would be the obvious choices, Love You to the Moon and Back or Runaway Bunny. Yeah, I couldn't read those.
And because it'd be like we'd never get through them, so we were reading happy books, funny books. We were singing songs. We did so many variations of Wheels on the Bus because we had been out for 24 straight hours, and let me tell you, the lyrics after a while didn't make any sense, and probably shouldn't have been heard by a little boy, but anyway. But it was, 3 days of nothing but love.
Yeah. So, and he died on the third day, almost exactly 3 days, which that symbol was not lost on us. He died, Tom was holding him when he passed. And I can tell you, walking out of the mother-baby unit empty-handed was really a challenge, let's just say that. And it wasn't a challenge just for me, it was a challenge for all the nurses and doctors. And the thing that I wasn't prepared for was the profound effect that Tristan had on the nurses and doctors. They genuinely loved him. He was a very special little boy, and everyone thinks their kid is special. I get it. But like, I can't even tell you what an effect he had on those people who spent time with him. So we got home, and we started.
Let me give one real quick shout out.
Yeah.
I know. Let me give a very quick shout out to Trevor Rabideau.
Yeah.
Because he came to the hospital with a car seat, and instead of sending our son to the morgue, he came, picked him up in a car seat, and brought him across home to Plattsburgh with dignity and in his little outfit, and that was so important to us that he didn't go the traditional route that often happens. So shout out to.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah. So you pick it up and wrap it up.
Yep. So, Harry, I'm not even looking at you. So what happened after we got home was that we started hearing from people who knew that we were having a funeral for him the following week. We decided it was going to be on Saturday, and people said that they wanted to make a donation in his name, and Tom and I were just overcome with grief, and we didn't know what to do. And so nothing really felt right, but I knew about this little giving library at Mountain Lake PBS, which had like $0. And basically and I had gone to all these PBS events with Tom. And basically, whatever dollars they had, they would bring piles and piles of free books, and they would give them out to kids. And I just remember the joy of kids coming up to that table, realizing they could take any book they wanted and walk away with it, and it was theirs for free. So we had read to Tristan a lot, and we read to him just like completely ridiculous books. I brought up this one because this is now the flagship of the Giving Library. This is called The Fat Cat. It's a wonderful book. I loved it as a child. I read it to him. Poor Tristan, he did not get any of the traditional stuff. He learned about how woodcutters can cut cats open and all the village people will pop out. So he has a sense of humor like we do.
If you've never read it.
It's a great book. It's you can buy it on Amazon or get it at a Tristan Fund event. But anyway, so we thought, you know what, we'll raise a couple $100 for the for the Giving Library and call it a day. And Tom and I were going to make a donation just to kick it off. Well, Jen Kowalczyk, who many of you probably know at Mountain Lake PBS, called me later that day. She goes, Jackie, the donations are really coming in. We need to figure something out here really fast. And I said, well, why don't we just designate that money aside and call it something different? And she suggested, we said, why don't you name it after Tristan? And she goes, why don't we call it the Tristan Fund? And I thought that was the greatest idea I've ever heard. So we did that, and then the money just kept coming in and coming in. And we've raised $65,000 to date. So what that means is that long after we're gone, we're all gone, that money will still be there. And Plattsburgh children in this area will have free books put into their hands at whatever event that they're at. That Mountain Lake PBS has a table.
At every event now, events that we host at the station, events we do out in public, hundreds and hundreds of books at every event will go out to children for free. And just the kindness of the community, the kindness of all of you, the kindness was just so overwhelming, and that's what has helped give us strength and helped us heal from this, was just the absolute generosity and kindness, outpouring of kindness from the community. And to have a kid now come up to the table and get a book and be excited about it and say, oh, I can have this for free and take it home, that also just warms our heart. And we just think of Tristan every time we're doing these events now, and how he only lived for 3 days, but his name lives on with the Tristan Fund, and this is really helping us to heal and giving us so much.
You know, those of us who have lost loved ones, you want their life to have meaning. And one of the things that we have found is people don't want to talk to us about Tristan, and people don't want to talk to you about the loved ones you've lost, because they don't want to see you cry, they don't want to upset you. When the reality is, people of loss, they want to keep those memories alive. And so I always like to give people a takeaway. So, you know, if you know someone who's had a loss, don't be afraid to bring that person up. And you can even ask them, can we talk about this? If you ever asked me that, the answer would be yes, and I'd blather on and show you like 100 pictures. But I think, you know, that's something really important, is that, you know, you want that person's life to mean something. And, you know, we really have moved forward, and this has given us a renewed purpose, even though we miss him every day, and we talk about him, we talk to him every day. This has truly helped us heal, and that's all very much thanks to all of you.
Appreciate it. We do have some bookmarks that have information on the table back there. So if you would like a bookmark, it's got all the info on it. So.
And I just want to give like Jay Lazage a huge shout out, because the song he's about to sing. So when I was pregnant for Tristan, I was listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Wonder and Queen, because I'm cool. And so Tristan got a lot of, I sang him a lot of Stevie Wonder, and this song that he's about to sing for you is a song that I sang to Tristan all the time, and we listen to it a lot in the hospital as well. So I want to thank you for learning this song and performing it now.
Around the sun, earth don't seem revolving, and the rosebuds love bloom in her day. Just as hate knows love's the cure, you can rest your mind assured, but I'll be loving you always. I can't feel the mystery of tomorrow, yeah. Passing the road every day. You know that what I say is true, and I'll be loving you always. Till the rainbow burns the stars out of the sky, until the dolphin flies and parrots lay on high, until the ocean curves every mile, till we dream of life and life becomes a dream. You know that true love lasts from nothing. Acceptance is the way we play. You know that life is giving love a guarantee, it lasts through forever and another day. Time moved on since the beginning. Seasons know exactly when to change. Kindness knows no shame, knows the God, the joy and pain. Tomorrow can make me the past that I mustn't feel. For I know deep in my mind the love of me I left behind. I'll be loving you always, until the day is night and night becomes the day. Always, until the trees is up, fly away, until the day that 8 times is 4. Always, until that is the day that I know wrong. I'll be loving you always.
In closing, I just want to thank you all for your support. The Bedrogis are no longer here, but in addition to Michelle Armani and her generous donations to the mural, Katrina Bedrogi-Bouchard died by suicide, and her family wanted to do something, and her friends started a GoFundMe and raised $6,000 for the mural. We raised a total of $47,796. Of that was a generous grant. Thank you, Rochelle Gregory, for your help through the mental health services, through the opioid monies. We got $23,000 for education on suicide, and we're using that in great ways. But in addition to that, there was the $24,796 that the community donated to it. It was an expensive project, but not that expensive. So what we're able to do is scholarships and education. Bonnie Black, who unfortunately is away at a Rotary event, does a lot of suicide prevention education in schools for the vets and community events. So the money that you all donated is going to great use. We do have sweatshirts and t-shirts if you want to wear them throughout the community. They're sold at cost. It's just what I really like about it on the back. It says, "Dear person behind me, you matter. We want you here. Love the person in front of you." Call or text if you need someone to talk to, and it has the 988 information. Is everyone familiar with 988? You can call if you're worried about someone. You can call for yourself to get counseling, and it is a local number, so they know our resources. So if you have someone you're concerned about and you want to call, by all means call. You can text if you don't feel like talking to someone. 988 is your lifeline for you and your loved ones. So I want to thank everyone for being here, for opening your hearts to everyone's stories. Rachel, wow, you blew it out of the water. That dance added just another nuance to this wonderful evening, and thank you for sharing that with us. To Asia and Tom and Jackie and Michelle, your candid vulnerability gave us strength, and we hope you felt their strength in reciprocation. So thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful day. The panelists will be here if you want us to ask a question or you are curious about things. We'll hang out and informally answer questions if you have them. We won't do like a question and answer, but we'll be here for a little while if you want to stop by and ask a question. Thank you again for coming.